I never thought my 6-year-old son would be the one to save my life. I never thought a child's trembling whisper could destroy everything I believed about my marriage. And I never thought I'd hear the words he said that morning. But here we are. And I'm glad you're here with me, listening, because I've never told this story before. Not fully. Not honestly. So, let me start at the moment that changed everything. It was a Tuesday. The kind of plain, boring weekday that never warns you before tearing your world apart. My husband, Daniel, had just left for a business trip. Or that's what he said it was. I remember watching him pull his suitcase down the hall, his coat half-buttoned, hair slightly messy from rushing. He kissed our son, hugged me briefly, and said, "I'll be home Friday. Don't wait up." And like an idiot, I smiled. Like an idiot, I believed him. Like an idiot, I shut the door behind him and started making breakfast. But my son was unusually quiet that morning. He sat at the small kitchen table with his cereal untouched, legs swinging nervously under the chair, eyes fixed on the front door like he expected someone or something to come back through it. I asked him if he felt sick. He shook his head. I asked him if he wanted something else to eat. Another slow shake. Then he whispered something so soft I barely heard it. "Mom, we can't go back home." I froze. For a second, I thought he was playing some strange game. Kids say weird things all the time, especially when they are tired or upset. But his expression, it wasn't childish. It wasn't playful. It was fear. Real fear. Fear that didn't belong on a child's face. Before I could ask what he meant, he grabbed my wrist with his tiny, trembling hand. "Mom, this morning I heard Dad. He was talking to someone on the phone. He said he's going to do something bad. To us." Those words, those impossible, terrifying words. I felt my breath leave my body. My son wasn't dramatic. He wasn't imaginative in a scary way. He didn't invent stories or nightmares like some kids did. He was gentle, quiet, thoughtful, and painfully honest. So when he said those words, something in me broke. Something in me listened. I knelt beside him, trying to stay calm even when my heartbeat was pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. "What did you hear, sweetheart?" I asked. He looked toward the living room, as if Daniel might still be standing there in the shadows. "He said he has to finish it, and that we won't be a problem anymore." My blood ran cold. You'd think a sentence like that would make a person explode into panic instantly. But it didn't. It made me still. Completely, frighteningly still, the way an animal freezes before the predator pounces. I remember swallowing hard, my throat dry like sandpaper, while my son's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, don't be mad," he whispered. I wasn't trying to listen. I just woke up because Dad was shouting. I got scared. I pulled him into my arms, and in that moment, something inside me shifted, like a door opening to a room I never wanted to enter. A part of me realized that I wasn't reacting like a normal wife hearing something impossible about her husband. I wasn't dismissing it. I wasn't laughing. I wasn't comforting my son with reassurances I didn't believe. I was afraid, and I already knew why. Because this wasn't the first sign. Not really, but I'll get to that. Right now, in that moment, I only knew one thing. We couldn't stay home. My hand shook as I grabbed my phone, my bag, my keys, random things I didn't even remember picking up. My son followed me silently, clutching his small backpack, the one he used for kindergarten. I kept expecting Daniel's car to come back down the street. I kept expecting him to burst through the door. I kept expecting something. Because for the first time since marrying him, I realized I didn't actually know what he was capable of. We walked out to the car, and as soon as I shut the door, my son whispered, "Are we safe now?" I lied. "Yeah, baby, we're safe." But I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure of anything anymore. As I started the engine, my mind raced through every detail of the morning and details from before. Little moments that didn't make sense back then but suddenly felt like puzzle pieces locking together into something terrifying. But I pushed them away. For now, my priority was simple: keep my son safe. I drove without a destination. Just away. Away from the house Daniel and I bought 5 years ago. Away from the life I thought was stable. Away from the man I believed loved us. But as we reached the first stoplight, my phone buzzed. A message. From Daniel. My breath caught. Forgot something. Coming back. I swear my heart stopped. He wasn't supposed to be coming back. He wasn't supposed to be anywhere near us. He wasn't supposed to know we were leaving. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel, because I suddenly realized something I hadn't thought of. He didn't text before. Ever. He always called. Always. But this time, he chose to text. Which meant something. Which meant a lot. Before I could think, my son whispered again, voice shaking. Mom, don't let him find us. And that's where this story really begins. Because what I discovered next, what I found when I finally faced the truth behind my son's warning, was darker than anything I could have imagined. Darker than betrayal. Darker than lies. And it began with a single decision I made at that stoplight. A decision that changed everything. When that text from Daniel popped up at the red light, every instinct in me screamed to keep driving. But before I tell you what I did next, I have to tell you why I didn't just shrug off my son's warning like a normal wife would. Because on paper, Daniel and I were fine. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. We met 8 years ago at a friend's barbecue. He was the charming guy by the grill, making everyone laugh, flipping burgers like he'd been born to host. I was the quiet one on the sidelines, the girl who preferred listening over talking. He noticed me anyway, brought me a plate, sat down, and asked 100 gentle questions like I mattered more than anyone else at that party. I remember thinking, this is what safety feels like. Someone choosing you. Someone paying attention. We move fast. Within a year, we were engaged. Within 2, married. By the 3rd, our son, Ethan, was born. Our house wasn't big or fancy, but it was ours. A small, 2-story place in a quiet suburb, with a maple tree out front that dropped red leaves all over the driveway in autumn. Ethan loved that tree. He'd run through the leaves every fall, laughing as they crunched under his tiny shoes. Inside, everything had its place. The fridge covered in Ethan's drawings. The couch with the sunken cushion where Daniel always sat today. The kitchen where I knew every creaking floorboard and every stubborn cabinet. From the outside, we looked like any other little family. Smiling photos on social media, birthday parties, school events, and there were good moments, I won't lie. Sundays when Daniel made pancakes in ridiculous shapes, and Ethan would clap like his dad was some kind of magician. Movie nights when we'd all pile on the couch, Ethan falling asleep halfway through with his head on my lap. Late evenings when Daniel would come up behind me while I was washing dishes, wrap his arms around my waist, and rest his chin on my shoulder like we were still newlyweds. Those were real. They just make them easier to ignore. The first subtle shift came after Ethan was born. Daniel started working later. At first, I believed him. New projects, new responsibilities. I'm doing this for us. I wanted to be supportive. I stayed home with Ethan, did the bedtime routines, the night feedings, the endless laundry. Whenever I tried to talk about how lonely I felt, Daniel would sigh, run a hand through his hair, and say, "You think I'm not tired? I'm killing myself out there so you don't have to." The conversation always ended there, with me feeling guilty for even opening my mouth. Slowly, his charm turned sharp. Not all the time, just in flashes. Little comments that stung. "Wow, you're still in pajamas. Must be nice, staying home all day. Can't you keep Ethan quieter when I'm on a call?" I told myself he was stressed. Everyone gets snappy sometimes. It wasn't abuse, I thought. It wasn't that bad. But my body started reacting before my brain would admit anything was wrong. I'd tense up when I heard his car in the driveway. I'd rush to make sure the house was spotless before he walked in. Ethan and I learned to read his moods from the sound of his footsteps. If his steps were heavy and fast, we stayed out of the way. If they were light and slow, we breathed a little easier. I remember one night in particular. Ethan was 3, playing with toy cars on the living room rug. I was sitting on the floor with him, tired but happy, just watching him drive the little cars over the bumps in the carpet. Daniel came home later than usual, the slam of the door making both of us jump. He walked in, tie loosened, jaw tight. Didn't say hello. Didn't kiss Ethan. Didn't look at me. He went straight to the kitchen, yanked open the fridge, stared inside like it had personally offended him. "Nothing cooked," he called out. My stomach dropped. I had been planning to start dinner in a few minutes. I opened my mouth to explain, but the tone in his voice made Ethan inch closer to me, pressing his side against my arm. "I was just about to," I started. "Just about to," he mimicked, shutting the fridge a little too hard. "You had all day, Mia." All day. As if Ethan wasn't a person. As if caring for a toddler was nothing. I remember looking at our son then. His big eyes were fixed on Daniel, confusion written all over his little face. And for the first time, something ugly flickered in my chest. Anger, not just hurt. I wanted to say, "Talk to me like this if you want, but don't you dare make him feel like a burden." I didn't. I swallowed it. That became my pattern. Swallow. Excuse. Rationalize. Daniel could still be sweet, after all. Still bring home Ethan's favorite snacks. Still send me texts in the middle of the day. "Miss you or can't wait to see you tonight." And when he was in a good mood, it was like the bad moments never existed. He'd laugh, joke, wrap an arm around my shoulders while we watched TV, kiss Ethan goodnight with tenderness that looked genuine. So I told myself I was overreacting, that I was sensitive, that every marriage had rough patches. People online talk about red flags. Mine weren't flags. They were whispers. Quiet, constant, easy to ignore if you didn't want to see them. Like the way Daniel started taking his phone everywhere, even to the bathroom. Like the way he turned the screen away when I walked by. Or how his work trips became more frequent, and his explanations became shorter. Client meeting. Conference. Just business. Once, late at night, I woke up and found him sitting at the edge of the bed, phone pressed to his ear, voice low. When he noticed I was awake, he ended the call quickly and slid back under the covers with a fake sleepy smile. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "Go back to sleep." The next morning, he bought us pastries from my favorite bakery and joked around like nothing was wrong. And I let it go. But Ethan didn't. I started noticing the way Ethan would stiffen sometimes when Daniel raised his voice on the phone. The way he'd tug my sleeve and whisper, "Is Dad mad?" whenever heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. Once, when Ethan was 5, he looked up at me with those big, serious eyes and asked, "Mom, why is Dad nice some days and mean on others?" That question broke something in me. I didn't have a good answer. "Dad's just tired." "Baby," I said. "Grown-ups get tired and grumpy sometimes." But the truth was uglier. Grown-ups who feel powerful in one place often try to stay powerful everywhere, even at home. Still, I kept painting over the cracks, because leaving felt bigger than staying, because confrontation felt more dangerous than silence. And then, slowly, things escalated. The money got weird. Cards declined when they shouldn't have. Daniel suddenly became very defensive whenever I asked about finances. "I've got it handled," he snapped once. "You don't need to worry about that." Another time, I found a thick envelope of cash hidden behind cleaning supplies under the sink. When I brought it up, he laughed it off. "Just emergency money." Emergency for what? I didn't press. But the real shift, the one I can't pretend I didn't feel, happened about 3 months before that Tuesday morning. Daniel came home late again, smelling faintly of expensive cologne that wasn't his usual. His shirt collar was open, and there was a lipstick mark so faint that I almost thought I imagined it until I touched it with my thumb. He froze, just for a second. Then he smiled, too casual. "Some woman hugged everyone at the client dinner," he said quickly. "You know how these events are." He grabbed his shirt from my hand, walked to the laundry basket, and stuffed it in. Conversation over. I remember standing in the doorway, my heart pounding, my mind racing with possibilities I didn't want to accept. Cheating, lying, secrets. But once again, I swallowed it. Told myself I needed proof. Told myself I needed to be sure before accusing him of something that could blow our family apart. Then, 2 weeks before the business trip, I overheard him on the phone from the hallway. His voice was low, sharp. No, I said Friday. It has to be done by Friday. Once they're out of the way, I'm free. You'll get your money. I remember my body going cold, my fingers tightening on the laundry basket I was holding. Once they're out of the way, I should have walked in right then. I should have demanded answers. I should have called someone. Instead, my footsteps made a small sound, a creak of the floorboard. Daniel glanced over his shoulder, saw my shadow, and his tone changed instantly. Yeah. I'll email you the report, he said into the phone. Talk tomorrow. He hung up, smiled at me like nothing was wrong, and asked what was for dinner. I told myself he meant something else. A project. A problem at work. Anything but us. Because sometimes it's easier to imagine a stranger is in danger than to think you are. And so, I did what I always did. I convinced myself it was nothing. Until that Tuesday morning. Until my young son, the one person in the world who never lied to me, looked up with wide, terrified eyes and whispered, "Mom, I heard Dad planning something bad for us." And suddenly, all those whispers, the late nights, the hidden cash, the lipstick, the secretive calls, I realized I was no longer just a wife worrying about a distant possibility. I was a mother who might have only one chance to protect her child. So I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, ignored the honk of the car behind me when the light turned green, and made a decision that would change everything. I did not turn back home. And the place I chose to drive to next, that was the first step in uncovering what Daniel was really planning. When I drove away from that stoplight, hands trembling on the steering wheel, I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a destination. I didn't even have a clear thought beyond one instinct pulsing through me like a heartbeat. Get Ethan somewhere safe. Anywhere but home. Anywhere Daniel wouldn't expect. So I drove aimlessly for several minutes, my mind racing faster than the car. Ethan sat in the back seat, hugging his little backpack, watching me in that silent way kids do when they know something is very, very wrong. "Mom," he whispered after a while. "Yeah, baby. Are we running away?" His voice cracked so gently I almost lost control of the car. I forced a breath. "No, sweetheart, not running. Just taking a break. Just for today." He didn't believe me. I could see it in his reflection in the rearview mirror. Children know when adults lie, especially when fear hangs in the air like smoke. I pulled into the parking lot of a small park on the outskirts of town. Not a crowded one, the kind people forget exists unless they live nearby. A few trees, a peeling bench, an empty slide. Nothing special, but it was quiet. No houses nearby, no cameras, and most importantly, no one would think to look for us there. I parked under a tree and turned off the engine. For a moment, I just sat there, breathing hard, fingers digging into the steering wheel. Ethan leaned forward. "Are you scared, Mom?" I didn't lie this time. A little. He swallowed. "Because of Dad?" That question, those 3 words, cut deeper than I expected. When your own child is scared of the man who's supposed to protect him, something inside you shifts forever. Something permanent. I turned around and took Ethan's hand. "Sweetheart, what exactly did you hear this morning? Start from the beginning, okay? Don't worry. You're not in trouble." He nodded, eyes glassy with a fear no child should ever feel. I woke up because Dad was yelling. He was talking on the phone. He said, Ethan looked down. He said he was going to handle it tonight, and that she won't see it coming. My heart dropped so fast it felt like falling through the floor. Handle it tonight. She won't see it coming. My mind locked onto the pronoun, she. Was that me? Who else could it be? And why tonight? Ethan continued, his voice shaking. He said he needed to make sure the boy is quiet. "Mom, am I the boy?" My chest seized. I felt like I couldn't breathe. This wasn't childish imagination. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't something a 6-year-old could twist into something darker. This was clear. This was specific. This was danger. Suddenly, all those small moments, the late-night whispers, the hidden cash, the lipstick, the tense phone calls snapped into focus. They were no longer isolated red flags. They were evidence. My hands went cold. My stomach felt hollow. But something else rose beneath the fear. Anger. A slow, deep, burning anger that I didn't recognize in myself. I hugged Ethan tightly, burying my face in his hair. "You did the right thing telling me," I whispered. "You saved us, sweetheart. You saved us." He clung to me with both arms, trembling. And in that moment, I knew I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep swallowing things down. I couldn't keep painting the picture of a normal family when the paint was made of lies. But the biggest shift, the real incident that changed the direction of my life, didn't happen until my phone buzzed again. Another message. This time, not from Daniel. From an unknown number. "We're meeting tonight. Same place." Followed by a second text. "Make sure she doesn't find out." I stayed at the screen, numb. My vision blurred. My breath stopped. Make sure she doesn't find out. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't paranoia. Someone else was involved. Someone Daniel was meeting tonight. For a moment, I told myself maybe it was work-related. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe this wasn't about me. But then, a third text came. "If she shows up early or asks questions, we have a problem." A sickening realization hit me. Those texts were sent because someone thought they were messaging Daniel. Daniel must have given them my number by mistake. Or maybe he used a burner phone, and the person assumed this was it. Whatever the reason, I now had proof that something was happening tonight. Something secret. Something dangerous. Something meant to involve or eliminate me. I felt my breath return in sharp, painful bursts. A wave of nausea hit me so hard I had to swallow twice to keep myself steady. Ethan gently tugged my sleeve. "What's wrong, Mom?" I forced myself to shut off the screen before he could read anything he shouldn't. "Nothing you need to worry about, sweetheart." But the truth was, I was spiraling. I opened my messages again, staring at the unknown number. 3 texts, 3 confirmations, a meeting, a warning, a threat. I needed answers. I needed clarity. I needed to know whether Daniel was involved in something criminal or something worse. My mind raced through possibilities. A business deal gone wrong. Death? Blackmail? Another woman? A double life? Or something darker? Something life-threatening? All I knew was that the danger wasn't imaginary anymore. It had a timestamp. It had a plan. It had a she. And I had no doubt now. She was me. For the first time since leaving the house, I felt something new inside me. Resolve. A sharpness. A cold clarity that comes only when fear transforms into strategy. I took a deep breath and made the first real decision of this nightmare. I needed help. But not from the police. Not yet. Because what would I tell them? My son heard a scary conversation. I got a few strange texts. "I feel something bad is coming." They'd dismiss me. They'd tell me to go home. They'd tell me to talk to Daniel first, the very man I now believed wanted to harm us. No, I needed someone who knew Daniel. Someone who could give me information without tipping him off. And immediately, one name came to mind. Mark, Daniel's best friend since high school. The one person Daniel trusted blindly. The one person who might know what he was involved in. But there was a problem. Mark hadn't spoken to me in months. Not since that strange argument he and Daniel had. The one where Daniel came home furious, saying Mark was out of line and didn't know what he was talking about. They'd reconciled, apparently, but Mark had stopped coming around. Stopped calling. Stopped visiting. And now, suddenly, I wondered why. What did Mark know? What had he tried to warn Daniel about? I wiped my palms on my jeans and turned to Ethan. "Sweetheart, we're going to visit someone, okay? Someone who can help us." "Is it Grandma?" "No, someone else." He nodded quietly, trusting me in that simple, heartbreaking way children do when they have no other choice. I started the engine again. A sense of dread wrapped around me, but underneath it, something else stirred. Curiosity, fear, desperation, and a sinking certainty that once I talked to Mark, everything would change. Because if anyone knew, it was the man who used to call him brother. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I glanced one last time at my phone. 3 texts, 3 warnings. Tonight. Make sure she doesn't find out. We have a problem. A chill climbed my spine. I wasn't supposed to know. I wasn't supposed to see any of this. Which meant one thing. The incident that started this nightmare had only just begun. And the real danger was waiting ahead, in whatever Mark was about to tell me. Mark lived on the opposite side of town, a quiet, older neighborhood with houses that looked like they were built when people still cared about porches and real brickwork. As I drove through those streets, something inside me tightened. This wasn't a casual visit. This wasn't a quick chat. This was me chasing the truth and knowing, deep down, that I wasn't going to like what I found. Ethan sat quietly behind me, swinging his legs nervously. Every few minutes, he asked, "Are we almost there? Or is Dad coming?" I kept reassuring him, even though I had no reassurance to offer myself. When we pulled up to Mark's house, a small, brown brick place with an overgrown lawn and a dented mailbox, I felt my chest tighten. I hadn't seen him in at least half a year, but his car was in the driveway. That was enough. I parked, turned to Ethan, and said gently, "Baby, stay right here for a minute. I'll be close. I promise." He looked scared but nodded. "Okay, Mom." I walked up to the door and knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder. After a few seconds, I heard footsteps, hesitant ones. Then the door cracked open an inch, and Mark's tired face appeared. His eyes widened when he saw me. "Mia," he whispered. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. Or maybe he already knew what I was about to say. "Can I come in?" I asked. He hesitated, not out of rudeness, out of fear. But then he unlocked the door fully and stepped aside. Yeah, come in." The house smelled like old coffee and stress. Papers were scattered on the kitchen table. A half-assembled toolbox sat on the floor. The place looked lived in but tense, like someone had been pacing for hours. He didn't offer me a seat. He didn't smile. He didn't pretend this was casual. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately. "What happened?" I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mark, something's going on with Daniel. Something bad. I need you to tell me what you know." The blood drained from his face. He ran a hand through his hair and let out a frustrated breath. "I was afraid of this," he muttered. I told him this would happen. But he never listens." My stomach twisted. What would happen? "Mark, please, I'm scared." "And Ethan?" At the mention of Ethan, he stiffened. His eyes darted to the window, then back to me. "Mia, did Daniel do something to him?" he asked quietly. "No," I whispered, but Ethan heard him on the phone this morning. He said he was planning something bad. He mentioned tonight. Mark's jaw clenched. He closed his eyes like he needed a second to prepare himself. Then he motioned for me to follow him to the dining table. He pulled out a chair. I sat today. He sat across from me, elbows on the table, staring at his hands. "Mia, there's something you need to know." His voice was low, steady, resigned. "Daniel has been in trouble for a long time." I felt the floor drop. "What kind of trouble?" He looked up slowly. "The kind you don't come back from." My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. "What did he do, Mark?" He exhaled sharply. "He got involved with people who loan money to men like him, men who think they can gamble with their careers, their families, their futures. He started borrowing a few years ago. Business investments that turned into losses, then debts, then desperation." I shook my head. "No, Daniel would have told me. He always said." "He lied to you," Mark cut in, not unkindly. "He didn't want you to know he was in over his head." I felt sick. Every late night, every secretive call, every sudden trip, every unexplained expense. It all made a horrible kind of sense now. But Mark wasn't finished. He started doing favors for these people instead of paying them back. Illegal stuff, deliveries, meetings, acting as a middleman. I tried to pull him out. I begged him, but he kept saying he'd fix it, that he just needed one more deal. My hands trembled on the table. He put us in danger. Mark's jaw tightened. He put himself in danger first. But yeah, you too. I swallowed hard. You said illegal. What kind? Silence. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The look on his face said everything. Not drugs. Not small-time stuff. Something big. Something dangerous. Something life-ruining. I leaned back, breath shaky. Mark. Someone texted me. They thought they were texting Daniel. His eyes snapped up. What did they say? I pulled out my phone, opened the messages, and slid it toward him. He read them slowly, once, twice. With each line, his expression darkened. By the time he finished, he looked genuinely afraid. This isn't good, he whispered. This is very, very bad. What does same place mean? I asked. What place? And who's the she? It's me, isn't it? They're talking about me. Mark didn't answer immediately. He rubbed his forehead, then looked at me with a mixture of pity and dread. Daniel owes them money, Mia. A lot of money. More than he'll ever be able to pay back. And when people like that decide someone is a liability. He trailed off. He didn't need to finish. My throat closed. So you're saying someone wants to hurt us because of Daniel's mess? Mark closed his eyes for a moment, then nodded. Not someone. The people he's been working with. A coldness spread through me. Not fear, not anymore. Something colder. Something sharper. I whispered, is he meeting them tonight? He has no choice, Mark said quietly. They don't ask. They command. I felt the room spin. Mark, does Daniel know they are planning something for me? Mark hesitated. That hesitation told me the truth before his words did. He looked at me with a painful honesty. I think he does. My breath hitched. A small sound escaped my throat. Not a sob, not a cry. Just disbelief, grief, a cold collapsing inside me. He would never let them hurt Ethan. I whispered desperately, as if saying it could make it true. Mark broke eye contact. Mia, when men get this deep, they stop thinking normally. They start doing whatever they are told. They start believing the only way out is to remove the problem. Remove the problem. I felt the words hit me like a physical blow. I'm the problem, I said numbly. Mark didn't deny it. My chest tightened painfully. My ears rang. I felt like I might faint. He's not the man you think he is anymore, Mark added quietly. I tried to warn him. I told him this path would destroy everything. But he kept saying he'd fix it. He kept saying he had a plan. A plan? I whispered. What kind of plan? Mark swallowed hard. One that didn't include you. I stared at him, frozen, breathless, unable to feel my fingers. Before I could speak, Ethan's small voice came from the doorway. Mom. I turned. He was standing there clutching his backpack, eyes wide. And in that moment, something inside me snapped into place. Fear dissolved into clarity. Confusion hardened into purpose. Mark hesitated again. Then he nodded slowly, grimly. I'll tell you. But once I do, there's no going back. I looked at Ethan, my son, my heartbeat, my only true innocence left in this broken life. And I said, without fear, I don't want to go back. Because part of me knew with a cold certainty, that the next thing I learned about Daniel would change everything forever. And whatever truth waited for me that night was going to destroy the illusion of my marriage for good. And that's exactly why I had to see it. That moment, that choice, that demand for the truth, was the lowest emotional point of my life. And it was only the beginning of what I was about to uncover next. Mark didn't speak at first, not because he didn't want to help, but because he understood the weight of what I'd just asked. Telling me where Daniel was meeting those people meant dragging me directly into the storm Daniel had created. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Fear had burned through me like wildfire earlier. What remained now was something colder, sharper, clearer. I wasn't reacting. I was thinking, planning. For the first time in a very long time, I felt in control of myself. Mark finally exhaled and motioned for me to sit again. Ethan sat on my lap, small and quiet, his head resting against my chest. I held him tightly, feeling his little heartbeat steady against mine. Mark spoke quietly, like revealing the truth might summon something dangerous. "They're meeting at the old lakeside warehouse," he said. "The one near the docks. Daniel used to drive there when he first got involved. He said it made things look official." My stomach clenched. I knew that place. Everyone in town did. A huge, abandoned storage building. Rusty metal siding. Broken windows. No neighbors. No streetlights. Just gravel, water, and shadows. A perfect place for secrets. A perfect place for threats. A perfect place for a woman to disappear. I closed my eyes and breathed slowly, forcing myself to think. Mark leaned forward. "Mia, don't go there." His voice was low but firm. "You don't understand the kind of men Daniel is mixed up with. They don't talk. They don't negotiate. They don't threaten. They execute." "I know," I whispered. "And they don't care who gets caught in the middle." "I know," I repeated. He stared at me, frustration crossing his face. "You think you're stronger than you are right now. You're in shock. You're scared. That's not the right head to walk into this with." "I'm not walking into anything blindly," I said quietly. Mark scoffed. "You say that, but you're shaking." I looked down. He was right. My hands trembled against the table, not from panic, but from rage and heartbreak tangled together like barbed wire. "I need to see what he's doing," I said. "I need to know what he's become. I need to know what he was willing to do to us." Ethan shifted slightly in my lap, small fingers clinging to my shirt. That tiny pressure grounded me. Mark's expression softened. His voice lowered. "Mia, I know what it feels like to love someone and realize you never really knew them." My breath caught. "What happened to you?" He gave a bitter smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "Doesn't matter. Just, I've been where you are. And I promise you, chasing the truth hurts worse than not knowing. But once you start, you can't stop. You can't go back to pretending." I swallowed hard. I stopped pretending the moment I saw those texts. A silence stretched between us, heavy and understanding. Mark leaned back, rubbing his hands together. "If you're going to the warehouse, you're not going alone." "No," I said softly. "I'm not bringing Ethan anywhere near that place." I wasn't talking about Ethan. My eyes lifted to his. Mark held my gaze a long moment, then nodded slightly. "I'll go with you." Shock rippled through me. "Mark." "I knew Daniel long before you did," he said. "I knew him when he had nothing. I watched him turn into someone I don't recognize anymore." His jaw tightened. "I'm not letting you face this alone. And I'm not letting Daniel drag you down with him." A strange mix of relief and guilt swept through me. I didn't want to pull Mark deeper into Daniel's destruction, but I also knew he was right. I couldn't walk into an unknown danger alone. Not with a child depending on me. Not with men involved who had already talked about making sure she doesn't find out. Mark stood and grabbed his car keys off the counter. "I'll drive behind you," he said. "We'll go separately so it doesn't draw attention. But first," he pointed at Ethan, "he needs to stay somewhere safe." I nodded. There was only one place that came to mind, my sister, Lily. She lived 20 minutes away, in a small apartment above a bakery. Safe, crowded, noisy, full of life. Daniel hated visiting her because she asked too many questions. Which made her perfect. I gathered Ethan's backpack, hugged him tightly, and whispered, "We're going to Aunt Lily's. She'll keep you safe from me." He looked up at me with trembling lips. "Are you coming back, Mom?" That question nearly broke me, but I forced a steady voice. "Yes, sweetheart, I'm coming back." A pause. Then I added, "No matter what happens, I'll always come back for you." He wrapped his arms around my neck, squeezing so tightly it made breathing hard. It didn't matter. I held him even tighter. That hug, that tiny, desperate moment, was what locked my resolve into something unbreakable. I wasn't just going to follow Daniel. I wasn't just going to watch. I wasn't just going to discover the truth. I was going to stop him, one way or another, for Ethan, for myself, for the life he tried to destroy. We arrived at Lily's place 15 minutes later. She opened the door wide, eyes widening at the sight of me and Mark behind me. "Mia, what's going on?" she asked. I didn't explain everything, just enough to make her pale. "There's trouble," I whispered. "I need you to watch Ethan. Don't open the door for anyone but me." Lily didn't argue. She hugged Ethan tightly, promised to keep him safe, and pulled him inside without another question. Ethan tried to cling to me again, but Lily held him firmly. "It's okay, baby," she whispered to him. "Your mom's coming back." I kissed Ethan's forehead one last time. "Be brave. I'll see you soon." When I walked away from that door, I felt something I'd never felt before. Pure, cold purpose. No fear, no confusion, just a calm, deadly clarity. I walked back to my car. Mark pulled up beside me. Our windows rolled down simultaneously. "You ready?" he asked. "I'm ready," I answered. And for the first time, I meant it. He nodded. "Then let's go end this." The drive to the warehouse was quiet. No music, no small talk, no racing thoughts anymore. Just a steady beat inside my chest, a rhythm of resolve. Everything in my life had led to this moment. Every lie, every late night, every bruise on my spirit I pretended wasn't there. I was done being powerless. I was done letting Daniel dictate the narrative. I was done ignoring who he'd become. The closer we got to the docks, the colder the air became, the kind of cold that feels heavy, like it's warning you to turn around. But I didn't. I kept driving. When the warehouse finally appeared in the distance, a hulking, rusted skeleton against the gray sky, I felt my pulse steady. Not race, not spike. Steady, controlled. Because I knew something important. This wasn't the climax of the story. This wasn't the fear. This wasn't chaos. Mark hesitated again. Then he nodded slowly, grimly. "I'll tell you. But once I do, there's no going back." I looked at Ethan, my son, my heartbeat, my only true innocence left in this broken life. And I said, without fear, "I don't want to go back." Because part of me knew with a cold certainty, that the next thing I learned about Daniel would change everything forever. And whatever truth waited for me that night was going to destroy the illusion of my marriage for good. And that's exactly why I had to see it. That moment, that choice, that demand for the truth, was the lowest emotional point of my life. And it was only the beginning of what I was about to uncover next. Mark didn't speak at first, not because he didn't want to help, but because he understood the weight of what I'd just asked. Telling me where Daniel was meeting those people meant dragging me directly into the storm Daniel had created. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Fear had burned through me like wildfire earlier. What remained now was something colder, sharper, clearer. I wasn't reacting. I was thinking, planning. For the first time in a very long time, I felt in control of myself. Mark finally exhaled and motioned for me to sit again. Ethan sat on my lap, small and quiet, his head resting against my chest. I held him tightly, feeling his little heartbeat steady against mine. Mark spoke quietly, like revealing the truth might summon something dangerous. "They're meeting at the old lakeside warehouse," he said. "The one near the docks. Daniel used to drive there when he first got involved. He said it made things look official." My stomach clenched. I knew that place. Everyone in town did. A huge, abandoned storage building. Rusty metal siding. Broken windows. No neighbors. No streetlights. Just gravel, water, and shadows. A perfect place for secrets. A perfect place for threats. A perfect place for a woman to disappear. I closed my eyes and breathed slowly, forcing myself to think. Mark leaned forward. "Mia, don't go there." His voice was low but firm. "You don't understand the kind of men Daniel is mixed up with. They don't talk. They don't negotiate. They don't threaten. They execute." I know, I whispered. And they don't care who gets caught in the middle. I know, I repeated. He stared at me, frustration crossing his face. You think you're stronger than you are right now. You're in shock. You're scared. That's not the right head to walk into this with. I'm not walking into anything blindly, I said quietly. Mark scoffed. You say that, but you're shaking. I looked down. He was right. My hands trembled against the table, not from panic, but from rage and heartbreak tangled together like barbed wire. I need to see what he's doing, I said. I need to know what he's become. I need to know what he was willing to do to us. Ethan shifted slightly in my lap, small fingers clinging to my shirt. That tiny pressure grounded me. Mark's expression softened. His voice lowered. Mia, I know what it feels like to love someone and realize you never really knew them. My breath caught. What happened to you? He gave a bitter smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. Doesn't matter. Just, I've been where you are. And I promise you, chasing the truth hurts worse than not knowing. But once you start, you can't stop. You can't go back to pretending. I swallowed hard. I stopped pretending the moment I saw those texts. A silence stretched between us, heavy and understanding. Mark leaned back, rubbing his hands together. If you're going to the warehouse, you're not going alone. No, I said softly. I'm not bringing Ethan anywhere near that place. I wasn't talking about Ethan. My eyes lifted to his. Mark held my gaze a long moment, then nodded slightly. I'll go with you. Shock rippled through me. Mark. I knew Daniel long before you did, he said. I knew him when he had nothing. I watched him turn into someone I don't recognize anymore. His jaw tightened. I'm not letting you face this alone. And I'm not letting Daniel drag you down with him. A strange mix of relief and guilt swept through me. I didn't want to pull Mark deeper into Daniel's destruction, but I also knew he was right. I couldn't walk into an unknown danger alone. Not with a child depending on me. Not with men involved who had already talked about making sure she doesn't find out. Mark stood and grabbed his car keys off the counter. I'll drive behind you, he said. We'll go separately so it doesn't draw attention. But first, he pointed at Ethan. He needs to stay somewhere safe. I nodded. There was only one place that came to mind, my sister, Lily. She lived 20 minutes away, in a small apartment above a bakery. Safe, crowded, noisy, full of life. Daniel hated visiting her because she asked too many questions. Which made her perfect. I gathered Ethan's backpack, hugged him tightly, and whispered, We're going to Aunt Lily's. She'll keep you safe from me. He looked up at me with trembling lips. Are you coming back, Mom? That question nearly broke me, but I forced a steady voice. Yes, sweetheart, I'm coming back. A pause. Then I added, no matter what happens, I'll always come back for you. He wrapped his arms around my neck, squeezing so tightly it made breathing hard. It didn't matter. I held him even tighter. That hug, that tiny, desperate moment, was what locked my resolve into something unbreakable. I wasn't just going to follow Daniel. I wasn't just going to watch. I wasn't just going to discover the truth. I was going to stop him, one way or another. For Ethan, for myself, for the life he tried to destroy. We arrived at Lily's place 15 minutes later. She opened the door wide, eyes widening at the sight of me and Mark behind me. Mia, what's going on? She asked. I didn't explain everything, just enough to make her pale. There's trouble, I whispered. I need you to watch Ethan. Don't open the door for anyone but me. Lily didn't argue. She hugged Ethan tightly, promised to keep him safe, and pulled him inside without another question. Ethan tried to cling to me again, but Lily held him firmly. It's okay, baby, she whispered to him. Your mom's coming back. I kissed Ethan's forehead one last time. Be brave. I'll see you soon. When I walked away from that door, I felt something I'd never felt before. Pure, cold purpose. No fear, no confusion, just a calm, deadly clarity. I walked back to my car. Mark pulled up beside me. Our windows rolled down simultaneously. You ready? He asked. I'm ready, I answered. And for the first time, I meant it. He nodded. Then let's go end this. The drive to the warehouse was quiet. No music. No small talk. No racing thoughts anymore. Just a steady beat inside my chest, a rhythm of resolve. Everything in my life had led to this moment. Every lie, every late night, every bruise on my spirit I pretended wasn't there. I was done being powerless. I was done letting Daniel dictate the narrative. I was done ignoring who he'd become. The closer we got to the docks, the colder the air became. The kind of cold that feels heavy, like it's warning you to turn around. But I didn't. I kept driving. When the warehouse finally appeared in the distance, a hulking, rusted skeleton against the gray sky, I felt my pulse steady. Not race, not spike. Steady, controlled. Because I knew something important. This wasn't the climax of the story. This wasn't the fear. This wasn't chaos. This was the turning point. The moment before the storm. The quiet breath before the scream. I parked at the far edge of the gravel lot. Mark parked beside me. We sat there, engines off, watching the dark shape of the warehouse. You still sure about this? He asked through my open window. His voice was cautious, not doubting, just concerned. I looked at the warehouse, at the place where the truth waited, at the place Daniel planned to meet men who wanted me gone. And I whispered the only answer that made sense anymore. Yes. Because I wasn't afraid of the truth. Not anymore. I was ready for it. I needed it. And I was prepared, truly prepared, for whatever I was about to see next. Even if it destroyed everything. The moment we stepped out of the cars, everything inside me shifted. The air felt heavier. The cold cut sharper. The world sounded quieter than it should. The warehouse stood in front of us like a warning. Tall, dark, silent. A rusted metal giant waiting to swallow whatever walked through its doors. Mark touched my arm once. A grounding gesture. You stay behind me, he whispered. I nodded. No argument. Not now. We walked across the gravel, each step sounding impossibly loud. Every crunch beneath my shoes sent a tremor up my spine. Halfway there, Mark froze. A faint sound drifted from inside the warehouse. Voices. Low. Muffled. Serious. Not the casual tone of men meeting for business. The tone of men planning something final. We crept closer until the loading door came into view, cracked open 2 inches. Just enough for a shadow to move behind it. Mark leaned close. Mia, this is your last chance to walk away. I shook my head. He looked at me a long moment. Then he exhaled, resigned. Stay behind me, no matter what happens. We slipped to the side of the building, where a broken window sat a few feet off the ground. Not shattered, not jagged, just cracked enough to hear through. Mark lifted himself first, quietly checking inside. Then he motioned for me. I stepped up, my palms gripping the cold metal frame, and looked in. And for the rest of my life, I will never forget what I saw. Daniel stood in the center of the open warehouse floor. But he wasn't alone. 3 men circled him. Not friends, not colleagues. Predators waiting for confirmation. Daniel looked nervous, agitated, backing himself into tighter body language, hands fidgety, eyes darting. One of the men, tall, shaved head, leather jacket, spoke sharply. So, you got it done. Daniel swallowed. I'm working on it, he said. I told you I would handle it today. My heart stuttered. Handle. Today. Leather jacket stepped closer. Working on it isn't enough. We said tonight. She needs to be gone by tonight. That was the deal. She. Me. Again. No doubt left. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. It's complicated. My kid. Leather jacket cut him off hard. The kid doesn't matter. My blood went ice cold. Ice. Frozen. Unmoving. Daniel shook his head quickly. No. No. I told you. You don't touch them. I'll take care of it. I just need more time. Another man snorted. You've been saying that for months. Daniel's voice cracked. Just give me today. I'll get it done. I'll call you when it's finished. Leather Jacket smiped. Finished. Interesting word. Mark's hand tightened around the window ledge. I held onto the frame until my nails dug into my skin. Daniel turned away from the men, and for the first time, I saw his face clearly. He was terrified, sweating, shaking, a shell of the man I once married. No charm, no confidence, just fear. Fear of them, fear of what they wanted, fear of what he'd agreed to do. I heard the tremor in his voice. I can't kill her, okay? My lungs stopped. The world went silent inside me. I can't kill my wife, he said again, almost pleading. I thought maybe I could scare her, or disappear for a while. But kill her? I can't do that. A heavy silence fell between the men. Then Leather Jacket laughed. Slow, cruel. That's adorable, he said. But you don't get to choose anymore. Daniel flinched. The man continued, she knows too much. She's tied to your bank account. She's legally attached to your debts. And we can't have loose ends. Daniel ran both hands through his hair. He looked like he was about to collapse. I'll figure something else out, he insisted desperately. I'll sell the house. I'll work overtime. I'll. Leather Jacket stepped inches from Daniel's face. You don't get it. Each word hit like a hammer. You made promises. You took money. You messed up every job we gave you. Now the only way you get out of this alive is if she disappears. Tonight. Daniel shook his head violently. No, no, no. The third man, silent until now, finally spoke. We already sent the guy. You think we wait around for you? Daniel froze. His voice went dead. What guy? Leather Jacket smiled. The one we hired to do your job. My blood turned to ash. My legs nearly gave out. Mark grabbed my arm to keep me from falling. Daniel's face twisted into panic. You hired someone to kill her. Leather Jacket's expression went cold. To kill both of you, actually. Clean slate. Problem solved. Daniel lost it. He grabbed the man's jacket, screaming. "No. I said I would handle it. I said." The other two men shoved him back. Hard. Daniel stumbled, hitting the concrete. He stayed up, chest heaving, realization hitting him like a tidal wave. They're not home, he gasped. They're not home. He won't find them. Leather Jacket tilted his head. Where are they? I don't know. Daniel yelled, voice cracking. She left the house before I got back. I don't know where she went. One of the men stepped away, pulling out a phone. We'll find her. We have ways. Daniel's breathing turned ragged. No, please, don't hurt them. Hurt me instead. I messed up, not them. The men exchanged a look. Then Leather Jacket leaned down. You should have thought of that before you bet your family on your stupidity. Daniel's face twisted with something I didn't expect. Regret. Real regret. Pain. Guilt. But it was too late for guilt. Inside me, something dark clicked into place. Not fear. Not pity. Not even heartbreak. Rage. Cold, precise rage. Because everything was clear now. Daniel chose this. He chose them over us. He chose money over family. He chose survival over loyalty. Even if he regretted it now, he'd already made the deal. He already set the plan. He already agreed to my death. I wanted answers. Now I had them. All of them. Mark whispered beside me, we need to get out. Now. But I didn't move. Below the window, Daniel suddenly stood up. He shoved the men away and shouted, she's smart. She'll figure it out. She's probably already gone. Leather Jacket grabbed him by the collar. Then you better pray she doesn't go to the police. Because if she does, we're not killing just her. We're killing you too. Daniel crumpled to his knees. Actual tears fell. The man I once loved, broken, begging, pathetic. The man who almost let someone murder me. My hand shook. Mark whispered sharply, Mia, we're exposed here. We need to go. This time I listened. We backed away from the window. Slow, quiet. Every step feeling like a final step in one phase of my life. By the time we reached the cars, the cold night air hit my lungs like glass. Mark turned to me. I cupped the back of his head. Not yet, I murmured. But we will be. I promise. And for the first time, a real promise, not hope, not denial. I knew I could keep it. When Ethan finally fell asleep on the couch, curled up in a blanket, Lily pulled me aside. What happened? She asked softly. I told her everything. Not every detail. She didn't need nightmares, but enough to make her eyes fill with anger and protectiveness. You're staying here tonight, she said. No arguments. I nodded. I didn't have the strength to argue anyway. Mark texted me an hour later. Found him. Meeting tomorrow morning. We'll get what we need. I stayed at the screen a long moment, then typed, Thank you. He replied, Get some rest. Tomorrow we start the real fight. I set my phone down. Lily brought me a blanket. I curled up on the floor near Ethan, listening to the soft rise and fall of his breath. For the first time that day, I didn't shake. I didn't panic. I didn't freeze. I felt steady, clear, present. This was the resolution of the chaos, the eye of the storm, the quiet before the final understanding. Because I had accepted something important. Daniel was gone. Not physically, but the man I married didn't exist anymore. The man plotting my death was a stranger, a selfish, desperate stranger. And I didn't love that stranger. Not anymore. Tomorrow, everything would move toward closure, real closure. The kind built on truth, evidence, safety, and strength. Tomorrow, I would become the woman I needed to be. For me, for Ethan, for the life we still deserved. Tonight, though, I let myself breathe. The first calm breath of a woman who had survived the breaking and was ready for whatever came next. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because of fear. Fear had burned itself out hours ago, but because I kept watching Ethan breathe, slowly, peacefully, like he trusted the world again just because I was near him. That small rise and fall of his chest became the rhythm that settled everything inside me. The storm had passed its loudest part. The danger was still real, still close, but for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I wasn't drowning. Morning came quietly, soft light spilling through Lily's curtains. The smell of her bakery downstairs drifting upward, fresh bread, vanilla, warmth. A smell I didn't know I needed until I inhaled and felt myself loosen. I got up gently, covering Ethan with the blanket again before slipping into the tiny kitchen. Lily was already there. She didn't say anything. She just handed me a mug of tea and rubbed my back once, the way she used to when we were kids, and I cried over things that seemed unbearable then. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, Whatever happens today, you're not alone. And I realized something simple but life-changing. I wasn't alone. Not anymore. Not in this. Not in anything that came next. Mark picked me up around 10 a.m. Ethan stayed with Lily. Safe, protected. Mark looked tired, but he was alert, focused, ready. You sure about this? He asked. Yes. He didn't ask twice. We drove across town to a small mechanic shop hidden behind a line of dusty warehouses. The man Mark wanted me to meet was already waiting inside. He wasn't what I expected, not dangerous, not threatening, just a weary man who looked older than he should have and who flinched at every sound like someone who'd seen too much already. He had documents, screenshots, ledgers, messages, bank trails, everything Daniel had been involved with for the past 3 years. Evidence, real evidence, enough to destroy the men at the warehouse. Enough to put Daniel away for a long time. Enough to protect me and Ethan without question. When I picked up the first paper, seeing my husband's name next to transactions I couldn't even interpret, my hands went cold. Not from shock. Not anymore. This was confirmation. Closure. Truth. The end of every doubt and every instinct I had ignored for too long. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I didn't break. I simply said, Let's go to the police. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt the weight lift, not all at once, but slowly, like a fog clearing. We went to the station. I told the truth. All of it. The debts, the threats, the men, the meeting. The attempt on my life, the texts, my son's warning, the evidence Mark helped me gather. There were officers who frowned, who leaned forward, who exchanged glances with each other with growing seriousness. By the time I finished, they weren't questioning my sanity. They were questioning how I survived the night. They took everything seriously. They moved quickly. They put out alerts, calls, warnings. They sent a unit to Lily's apartment to protect Ethan immediately. They sent another to my home in case the men were looking for me, and another toward the warehouse. They asked if I wanted to press charges. I said yes, without hesitation, without guilt, without second thoughts. It was the easiest word I said all day. Yes, because this wasn't just about revenge. It wasn't about anger or bitterness. It was about ending a cycle that would have consumed my son if I didn't stop it now. Yes, because Daniel made choices that risked a child's life, and that was something I could never forgive or redeem for him. Yes, because survival sometimes means choosing yourself even when you never learned how to. The officers escorted me back to Lily's, and when I walked into her apartment, Ethan ran into my arms so hard he almost knocked the breath out of me. He was crying, really crying, the kind of relieved, exhausted crying children do when they've held in fear too long. And I held him, rocking him gently, whispering, "It's over, baby. We're okay. You're safe. I've got you." And I realized I meant it. Completely. I wasn't pretending. I wasn't hoping. I wasn't promising blindly. For the first time, we were safe. The next hours passed in a blur. Officers called with updates. Mark stayed close, but always a few steps behind, giving me space, letting me breathe, but never letting me feel abandoned. By late afternoon, it was official. The men from the warehouse were arrested at different locations. 2 tried to run. 1 didn't make it far. 1 confessed quickly when the police showed him the evidence. Daniel was arrested too. They found him in his car a few blocks from our house, head in his hands, trying to come up with a last-minute escape plan that didn't exist. When the officer told me that part, that he didn't try to fight, didn't lash out, didn't run, I felt nothing. No sadness, no victory, no anger, just nothing. Because the man I married had died long before the arrest. That night, with Ethan asleep again beside me, Lily sitting quietly nearby, and Mark texting me updates every hour, I finally let myself breathe out the last of the weight on my chest. I had survived betrayal. I had survived danger. I had survived the kind of fear people only whisper about. But more importantly, I had protected my son. Every choice I made, every moment I acted instead of froze, every truth I forced myself to face had led to this moment. Me, alive, safe, clear-headed, holding the hand of the only person who mattered more than anything else. I kissed Ethan's forehead and whispered into the quiet room, "We're going to be okay now. I promise." And for the first time, that promise felt like the truth. In the days that followed, life didn't magically go back to normal. It wasn't supposed to. Some things break and shouldn't be put back together. But we built something new, day by day, slowly, thoughtfully, honestly. Mark stayed in touch, checking on us, helping me navigate each legal step. Not because he owed me, but because he cared. Because he wanted to help fix what he couldn't prevent. Lily became my anchor, strong, stubborn, loving, refusing to let me slip into guilt or self-blame or fear. And Ethan, he blossomed. He slept better. He laughed more. He stopped flinching when the door opened. He stopped asking if his dad was coming home. He started drawing again. Colors, animals, smiling faces. And one morning he showed me a picture of him and me standing side by side under a big sun with the words, "Me and Mom are safe." I cried harder than I had all week. Not from grief, but from relief so pure it felt like healing. Looking back, I don't hate Daniel. I don't love him either. He became someone I couldn't recognize. Someone who chose darkness over the family who trusted him. But I learned something important. Sometimes losing a person is the only way to find yourself again. Sometimes breaking is the only way to rebuild the right way. Sometimes the scariest moments show you exactly who you are capable of becoming. Strong, clear, certain, alive. I survived him. I saved my son. And I found a life that is finally mine. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to tell, but maybe someone out there needs to hear it, to know they're not alone, to know leaving isn't weakness, to know survival is something you get better at every time you choose yourself. And now, as promised, did you like my story? Please like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far this story of mine travels. Because if this story reaches even one person who needs courage today, then everything I survived means something bigger. Sometimes the person who saves you is the version of yourself you haven't met yet, the one who finally chooses truth over fear and walks forward without looking back.